He was a US Open champion. He had millions of fans. And in one moment of pure rage, he destroyed everything. What he did inside that locker room is something golf has never seen before, and by the end of this video, you will understand why his own sport turned against him. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel brings you the real, untold stories from inside professional golf that nobody else is talking about. Stories that mainstream media is too scared to cover in full. Today's story is one of the most shocking falls from grace in recent golf history, and I promise you, by the time we get to minute 15 of this video, you are going to be shaking your head in disbelief. So stay with me, because this story only gets crazier from here. Let's start from the beginning. Wyndham Clark was not just another name on the PGA Tour. This was a man who, in 2023, had already done something most golfers only dream about. He won the US Open. Not a small regional event. The US Open. One of the 4 major championships in golf. He beat the best players in the world at the Los Angeles Country Club and lifted that trophy as a major champion. For a moment, Wyndham Clark was golf's golden boy. Young, talented, confident, and on top of the world. But here's the thing about fame in professional sports. It can disappear faster than it arrives. And what happened 2 years later would shock every single golf fan watching. Fast forward to last year's US Open, held at the legendary Oakmont Country Club in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Oakmont is not just any golf course. It is one of the most respected, most historic venues in the entire sport. It has hosted the US Open a record number of times. Walking into Oakmont as a professional golfer is supposed to be an honor. Players treat that clubhouse, that locker room, with a level of respect bordering on reverence. Wyndham Clark came into that tournament with pressure on his shoulders. He was the defending US Open champion from 2 years before, and expectations were high. But golf is a cruel game. One bad shot can ruin your entire week. And that's exactly what happened. During the tournament, Clark struggled. He carted a string of bogeys, his swing looked off, his confidence was clearly shaken. And then it happened. On the final hole before the cut, a bad shot, a bogey, and just like that, his tournament was over. He had missed the cut at the US Open. The tournament he once won. The major championship where he was supposed to defend his name. Gone in an instant. Now, missing a cut happens to golfers all the time. It's part of the sport. Players are disappointed, frustrated, sometimes even angry. But what separates a professional from an amateur is how you handle that frustration. And this is where everything went wrong for Wyndham Clark. According to multiple reports that later came out, Clark walked off that course and went straight into the locker room at Oakmont Country Club. And there, away from the cameras, away from the fans, in what he probably thought was a private moment, he completely lost control. Sources say he took out all of his anger and frustration physically on the lockers themselves. Not just a small dent. Not just a scuff mark. We are talking about serious, visible damage. Photos that later leaked online showed the bottom portions of multiple lockers completely caved in, smashed beyond repair. Now remember, these aren't ordinary lockers. These are century-old lockers inside one of the most prestigious, most historic clubhouses in American golf. Lockers that have stood through decades of championships, decades of legends walking past them. And in one fit of rage, one player nearly destroyed a piece of that history. Media were not allowed inside the locker room during this incident, so there was no official footage. But that didn't matter. Someone inside that room captured a photo of the damage, and within hours, that image was circulating across social media. Golf fans, journalists, fellow players, everyone was looking at this picture in shock. Was this really the same Wyndham Clark who lifted the US Open trophy just 2 years earlier? At first, the story stayed relatively quiet. No official statement. No confirmation from the club. Just whispers, leaked photos, and golf insiders speculating about what really happened. But you can't keep something like this hidden for long, especially not in the age of social media and instant news. About a month after the incident, the story exploded into the mainstream. Oakmont Country Club's president, a man named John Lynch, sent out an official letter to the club's members. This letter would change everything. In it, Lynch confirmed what many had suspected. He wrote that after multiple discussions with the United States Golf Association, the organization that runs the US Open, and with Oakmont's own board, a final decision had been made. Wyndham Clark would no longer be permitted on Oakmont Country Club property. He was banned. Let that sink in for a moment. A major champion. A US Open winner. Banned from one of golf's most historic clubs because of what he did in that locker room. This isn't a small fine. This isn't a quiet warning behind closed doors. This is a formal, documented ban from one of the most respected institutions in the entire sport. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The letter didn't just announce the ban. It laid out exactly what Clark would need to do if he ever wanted that ban lifted. And the conditions were not easy. According to the letter, Clark would have to do 3 things. First, he would need to fully repay the club for all the damages he caused. Second, he would need to make what was described as a meaningful contribution to a charity chosen by Oakmont's own board. And third, and perhaps most telling of all, he would need to complete counseling, specifically anger management sessions. Think about that for a second. A professional athlete, at the highest level of his sport, being told by a private country club that he needs anger management therapy before he's allowed back on the property. This wasn't just embarrassing. This was a public acknowledgement that something deeper was going on beneath the surface. Once this letter leaked to the media, the story spread like wildfire. Every major sports outlet picked it up. Fox Sports, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, golf publications around the world were covering the fall of a U.S. Open champion. And fans were divided. Some were furious, saying a professional athlete representing one of the most respected sports in the world should never act this way, no matter how frustrated he was. Others tried to defend him, saying everyone has bad moments, everyone struggles with pressure, and golf can push people to their emotional limits in ways outsiders don't understand. But the damage, both literal and to his reputation, was already done. Now here's something that made this story even more shocking. This wasn't actually the first time Wyndham Clark had shown this kind of behavior on a golf course. Just 1 month before the Oakmont incident, during the PGA Championship, Clark had already sparked controversy by smashing his golf driver in anger during a round. At the time, fans brushed it off as just another frustrated athlete having a bad day. Nobody could have predicted that just weeks later, that same frustration would escalate into something far more destructive. So when the Oakmont story broke, people started connecting the dots. This wasn't a one-time slip-up. This looked like a pattern. A pattern of anger issues that had been building up, tournament after tournament, until it finally exploded in the worst possible way. So how did Wyndham Clark respond once the world found out? He didn't run from it. To his credit, he eventually faced the media and the public directly. Speaking to reporters during a press conference, Clark admitted what he had done was wrong. He said he was deeply ashamed and embarrassed by his actions. He described being in what he called a tough place mentally during that time. He apologized, not just to Oakmont, not just to the USGA, but to the fans who had looked up to him. In his own words, he said it was a terrible thing that he did, and that he was very embarrassed and ashamed. He talked about wanting to win back the fans he had lost because of this incident. Later, at the following major championship, the Open Championship at Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland, Clark addressed the situation again. He told reporters he felt terrible about what happened and that he was doing everything he could to remedy the situation with Oakmont. He confirmed that all 3 conditions set out in that letter, the repayment, the charity contribution, and the counseling, were things he was willing to do. He said he wanted to show the golf community, and Oakmont specifically, that this incident did not reflect who he truly was as a person. Interestingly, despite all this controversy swirling around him, Clark actually performed well at that tournament, finishing tied for 4th place at Royal Portrush. It almost felt like he was trying to prove something. Trying to show the world that he could still compete at the highest level despite the storm surrounding his name. But the ban remained in place. And here's something that makes this story even more dramatic. Oakmont Country Club is scheduled to host the U.S. Open again in the future. Which means, if Clark's ban is never lifted, he could potentially be barred from ever stepping foot on that course again, even if he qualifies to play in a future U.S. Open held there. Imagine being a major champion, capable of competing at the highest level, but being physically banned from one of the venues where the sport's biggest tournament takes place. This raises a bigger question that golf fans have been debating ever since this story broke. Should professional athletes be held to a higher standard when it comes to controlling their emotions? Golf, more than almost any other sport, prides itself on tradition, etiquette, and respect. Unlike other sports where outbursts and aggressive behavior are sometimes even celebrated, golf has always operated under an unwritten code of conduct. Players are expected to be gracious in defeat, respectful of the course, and respectful of the history that surrounds them. Wyndham Clark broke that code in the most public way possible. And the consequences have followed him ever since. Some golf insiders have come out in support of harsher punishment. Even legendary golf instructors weighed in on the controversy. One well-known coach, closely connected to Tiger Woods' own coaching team, made comments online that many interpreted as subtly calling for an even harsher ban on Clark, referencing his behavior as inexcusable for someone given the privilege of playing at such a historic venue. On the other hand, sports psychologists and some fellow players have pointed out something important. Professional golf is an incredibly isolating, mentally taxing sport. Unlike team sports, where you have teammates to share both the highs and the lows, golf is just you, alone, against the course, against your own mind, for hours at a time. The pressure of being a defending champion, the pressure of high expectations, combined with a string of bad shots in front of a national television audience, can push even the most composed athletes to a breaking point. Does that excuse smashing century-old lockers in a fit of rage? Most people would say no. But it does help explain how someone with so much talent and so much success could end up in a situation like this. As of the most recent updates, Wyndham Clark continues to compete on the PGA Tour. He has spoken about wanting to make the Ryder Cup team, golf's biggest team competition, and continues to chase his place among the FedEx Cup standings, which determines the top players at the end of each season. His on-course performance since the incident has been a mixed bag, with both struggles and signs of return to form, including a runner-up finish on tour following the controversy. But no matter how well he plays going forward, this incident will likely follow him for the rest of his career. It will be the story that comes up every single time he plays at a major championship. It will be the headline that resurfaces every time Oakmont Country Club is mentioned in golf conversations. And it will serve as a cautionary tale for young golfers coming up through the ranks, a reminder that talent alone is not enough. How you handle pressure, how you handle failure, how you control your emotions in your darkest moments on the course, that matters just as much as your skill with a club in your hands. The big question that remains unanswered is this: will Wyndham Clark ever fulfill all the conditions required to lift his ban from Oakmont? Will he pay for the damages, make the charitable contribution, and complete the counseling sessions required of him? And if he does, will Oakmont Country Club actually welcome him back, or will this incident be something they never fully forgive? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: this story is far from over. And if there are new developments, new statements, or new updates on whether Wyndham Clark's ban gets lifted, you will hear about it right here on this channel first. If you found this story as shocking as I did when I first researched it, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, drop a like on this video, and let me know in the comments below. Do you think Wyndham Clark deserves a second chance, or was this punishment fair given what he did? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you think. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Stay tuned, because there are even more shocking stories from the world of professional golf coming your way very soon. See you in the next video.